The Lost Child. There was a moon once, silver and solemn, orbiting a gas giant like a beautiful child around its titanic, fuming parent. It no longer orbited now. It floated in fractured silence like a broken egg suspended in cosmic yoke. That was Thalath's doing. The queen of the Osinari did not mourn the moon. She mourned something smaller. Inside the remains of her worship, the Orenth, deep within its breathing walls of living alloy and memory-imbued crystal, Thalath sat unmoved. Her throne pulsed gently beneath her, a chair grown from the bones of a dead star beast, each pulse echoing her own heartbeat. She wore no crown. A queen need not wear a crown when she can level continents with a gesture. Her eyes, a haunting spectrum of violet and gold, scanned the tactical display hanging before her like a luminous spiderweb. It flickered. It dared to flicker. "Spindle," she said, and the hologram obediently stilled. The AI voice of the ship responded with the cracked charm of a centuries-old butler. "Your Majesty," it intoned. "I am experiencing mild system fatigue. Have you considered turning the galaxy off and on again?" "I have considered turning it off," she said without humor. "Permanently. Shall I prepare the orbital obliteration cannons, then?" "No. A pity." Her fingers curled. 10 standard cycles. That was how long she had chased the void for her daughter. 10 years of interrogating dying suns, of incinerating false leads, of threatening smugglers with truths worse than death. She had followed whispers through the Pleiadian nebula and clawed through debris fields full of liars. All for a single child. Her child. The last report came from the Terran fringe. A pirate clan called the Vinehal had been bragging about stealing a royal specimen from the Osinari. The specimen was a baby with long ears and eyes that hummed with light. It was sold off-world, lost in transit. The clan leader died mid-boast when he accidentally triggered a knife droid he'd been sitting on. Irony was rarely so punctual. But now there was a signal. A faint electromagnetic anomaly had appeared near an unimportant planet with one natural satellite, an abundance of water, and a troubling number of reality TV shows. "Earth," Thalath said. "Set course. Full cloak, passive scans only." "Of course, my queen," said Spindle. "Would you like me to reconfigure the atmosphere processor for human biology?" She arched an eyebrow. "You expect me to breathe Terran air?" "I expect you'll want to blend in. One does not reclaim a missing heir while announcing oneself with thermonuclear fanfare." "I reclaim exactly that way. Shall I put the thermonuclear fanfare on standby?" "Yes." Far below, on a green and stubbornly normal planet, Elliot Brown was trying to fix a toaster that claimed to be haunted. "You're not haunted," he said, poking it with a screwdriver. "You're just a bad AI with commitment issues." The toaster, an older model from his early robotics days, hissed in binary. "I don't care if you feel haunted, Brian. You're a toaster. Your only purpose in life is to brown bread and shut up." It made a sound like an offended sigh. Elliot sighed louder, asserting dominance. The little girl peeked around the corner of his cluttered workroom, blanket dragging behind her. Her violet eyes caught the light oddly, refracting it into tiny rainbows that danced across the wall. Her ears, longer than any human's should be, twitched with curiosity. "Is Brian being difficult again?" she asked, voice like chimes in the wind. Elliot smiled at her. "Just the usual existential crisis. Nothing some WD-40 can't fix." The girl, he'd named her Starlet because she'd fallen from the sky 5 years ago in what the news called a meteor incident, nodded solemnly. "I could sing to him. I sang to the roses and now they talk back. That's not necessarily an improvement, Star." She grinned, revealing teeth that were just a bit too pearly, too perfect. "Everything's better when it can talk back." Elliot couldn't argue with that logic, not when it came from a child who changed his entire life by crashing through his apartment roof one stormy night, clutched in what looked like a piece of living metal that had disintegrated upon impact. He'd found her there, cooing at the raindrops, surrounded by debris and the faint smell of ozone. He should have called someone. The authorities, scientists, someone who knew what to do with alien children. Instead, he'd wrapped her in his jacket and made her hot chocolate. 5 years later, she was growing faster than human children, speaking 5 languages, plus whatever she murmured to the plants, and occasionally making small objects float when she thought he wasn't looking. "Why don't you go check on the roses?" he suggested. "Make sure they're not planning a revolution." As Starlet skipped away, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing. The air felt charged, like before a lightning strike. Outside, clouds gathered unnaturally fast over his apartment building. In orbit, the Orentha's sensors pulsed with recognition and longing. They had found her at last. The lost princess of the Osinari. And Thalath's eyes narrowed as she focused on the human who kept her daughter. First contact. Elliot stood in his small rooftop garden, watching the storm clouds gather with unnatural speed. The roses, now sentient thanks to Starlet's peculiar abilities, whispered warnings that sounded like rustling leaves but formed coherent sentences in his mind. "Something's coming," they hissed collectively. "Something old. Something powerful." "Yeah, thanks for the weather report," Elliot muttered, but his hand trembled as he checked his phone. No storm warnings. No unusual meteorological events. Just this localized atmospheric disturbance directly above his building. Below, in the apartment, he could hear Starlet humming. The melody was alien, complex harmonies that seemed to overlap themselves impossibly, notes that bent in ways human vocal cords couldn't produce. The sound made his chest ache with a strange longing for places he'd never seen. The air crackled. A column of light, subtle yet undeniable, descended from the clouds to touch the rooftop garden. The roses screamed, their voices high and panicked in his mind. And then she was there. Thalath materialized without fanfare, though the very air around her seemed to bow in deference. She was tall, inhumanly so, with skin like polished obsidian that caught the dim light in iridescent flickers. Her eyes, those haunting pools of violet and gold, fixed immediately on Elliot. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the weight of stars dying. "Where is she?" Elliot's mouth went dry. 5 years of raising an alien child, of watching her grow and learn and change his world, had not prepared him for this moment. He'd always known, somewhere deep down, that Starlet wasn't his to keep. That someday, someone might come looking. But he'd hoped it wouldn't be like this, with the weight of cosmic royalty standing on his melting rooftop tiles. "Who's asking?" he managed, forcing a bravado he didn't feel. One elegant eyebrow arched. "I am Thalath, Queen of the Osinari, destroyer of the 7th Fleet, breaker of moons, and mother to the child you have taken." "Taken?" Elliot sputtered. "I didn't take anyone. She fell, literally, into my life." Thalath took a step forward, and Elliot felt the ground beneath his feet vibrate. "You kept her." "I raised her," he corrected, standing his ground despite every instinct screaming to run. "I found a scared little girl in a pile of rubble and gave her a home." Something flickered across Thalath's face, an emotion Elliot couldn't read, but it softened the hard lines around her eyes momentarily. "Show me," she commanded, but her voice had lost some of its edge. Before Elliot could respond, the door to the roof burst open, and Starlet bounded out, still trailing her blanket. She stopped abruptly, violet eyes widening as they locked onto Thalath. Time seemed to freeze. The Queen's composure cracked, her perfect regal facade crumbling at the edges as she stared at the child before her. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. "Mama?" Starlet whispered, the word so soft it might have been the wind. Thalath fell to her knees, a gesture so unexpected that Elliot took an involuntary step back. The Queen's hands trembled as she reached toward Starlet but stopped short of touching her. "Astrea," she breathed, using a name Elliot had never heard. "My starlight." Starlet, or Astrea, moved forward cautiously, her small hand extended. She touched Thalath's face with gentle fingers, exploring the features that were so like her own. "I remember your voice," she said. "From my dreams." The queen's eyes filled with tears that caught the light and refracted into tiny prisms. One escaped, rolling down her cheek like liquid diamond. "I sang to you. Every night, across the void, I sang." "I heard you," Starlet said simply. Elliot watched, his heart both breaking and warming at the reunion. This was always the ending, wasn't it? The found child returns to their rightful place. The temporary guardian steps aside. So why did it feel like he was losing his entire world? The queen gathered Starlet into her arms, holding her with a tenderness that belied her fearsome title. She looked up at Elliot over the child's head, her expression unreadable. "Human," she said quietly. "It seems I owe you a debt." Elliot swallowed hard. "She's a good kid. Smart. Kind. Talks to plants." "The Osinari gift," Thalath nodded. "Life speaking." Starlet pulled back from her mother's embrace and turned to Elliot with sudden concern. "You're not going to make me leave him, are you?" she asked Thalath. The queen stiffened. "You belong with your people." "With me." "He is my people too," Starlet insisted. "He makes me pancakes with faces. He taught me earth songs. He never minds when I accidentally make things float." Thalath's gaze returned to Elliot, more calculating now. "The human cannot come to Osinari space. He would not survive our atmosphere, our gravity, our politics." "Then I'm staying here," Starlet declared with the absolute certainty only a child can muster. The air around them grew heavy as mother and daughter locked eyes in a silent battle of wills. The roses, sensing the tension, began humming nervously. Above them, the clouds swirled faster, and Elliot heard a faint mechanical whine that he suspected was the alien ship's engines. The queen's hands glowed faintly, power gathering at her fingertips. "Perhaps," Thalath said finally, each word measured and precise, "there is a third option." And that was how Elliot Brown, mediocre barista and amateur robotics enthusiast, found himself being transported via light beam to an alien warship, holding the hand of a child who was apparently an alien princess, while her mother, the queen who had destroyed moons, assessed him with eyes that had seen the birth and death of stars. As the Orentha's interior materialized around him, walls of shifting metal that seemed almost alive, corridors that branched like arteries, Elliot had only one coherent thought. His landlord was going to be furious about the rooftop. The warship. Elliot stood at the observation window of the Orenth, sipping something the ship had assured him was safe for terrestrial digestive tracts. It tasted like lavender, starfruit, and poor life choices. He loved it. Beneath him, Earth spun in serene ignorance, the moon distant and smug as ever. Somewhere down there, his landlord was probably discovering the melted rooftop, and maybe the sentient roses in his garden, and the talking toaster. That one was on Starlet, he exhaled, fogging the glass. "So, spaceship dad," he said to no one. "Technically," came the smooth voice of the ship's AI, "you are the child's bonded guardian under Provisional Clause 8C of the Osinari Lineage Protocol." Elliot blinked. "I am legally her alien dad. Temporarily still counts." He grinned, raising his glass. "Suck it, Jeff from work." The Orenth hummed in response. The ship had grown fond of Elliot in the way ancient, super-intelligent vessels often did when they met humans with more heart than sense. And Elliot, in turn, had stopped flinching every time it opened a door with a musical chime and an existential whisper. Starlet came tumbling in from the corridor, trailing a scarf that looked suspiciously like a strip of reality. "I made a wormhole," she declared proudly. "You what?" "It's small. Just for socks." Elliot stared. "Do not put the cat in it." "I won't," she promised, with the exact tone children use when they absolutely plan to do the thing. Thalath entered after her, regal even in casual robes that shifted colors depending on whether you believed in gravity. Her long ears twitched slightly, a sign Elliot now understood meant she was amused. She duplicated the library yesterday, she said. Twice. Starlet added. Thalath continued, there are now 17 books titled, How to Hug a Black Hole Without Getting Pulled Apart. Elliot smiled. That one's useful. I'm still trying to hug your daughter without getting emotionally annihilated. Thalath's eyes softened. You've done more than I ever could have hoped. You held her when the galaxy forgot her name. You gave her laughter when all I had left was fury. You're giving me feelings, Elliot said, waving his drink. That's not fair. This tea is emotional enough. They watched Starlet roll down the hallway in a bubble of light. One of the corridor walls quietly morphed into a chalkboard and offered her a riddle. Elliot lowered his voice. So what now? The royal thing? A throne? Space taxes? Thalath hesitated, then with rare vulnerability, she said, she may choose. She is heir, yes, but not prisoner to destiny. I will offer her the Osinari legacy, the rebuilding of what was lost, but only if she wants it. Elliot nodded. She's got your ears, but her heart's her own. She has our hearts, Thalath corrected gently. There was silence between them for a moment, filled only by the hum of the ship and the faint sound of Starlet trying to convince a plasma conduit it was a puppy. Elliot glanced sideways. So, do I go home now? Thalath studied him. Would you want to? Elliot laughed quietly. I mean, I had a job. A very mediocre one. I had a coffee mug I was sort of emotionally dependent on. But no. No, I don't think I do. Then stay, she said. She would wish it. And I would not mind. Elliot raised an eyebrow. Thal, was that almost a compliment? I am trying, she admitted. He grinned. You're doing great, Your Majesty. She rolled her eyes. Do not call me that while wearing fuzzy socks. He looked down. They're space-themed. They both laughed, and in that shared warmth, something shifted. Not galactically, not cosmically, but personally. The War Queen and the human barista-turned-guardian stood together, bound by the child who had crash-landed into their lives and changed everything. What they didn't know was that their fragile new peace was already threatened. The Vinehell pirates had long tentacles, and the news of the Osinari heir's discovery had spread through the seedier corners of the galaxy. Some saw opportunity in the vulnerable position of a queen who had stepped away from her throne to find her child. Others saw revenge for moons destroyed and fleets scattered. A small fleet of unmarked ships was already gathering at the edge of the solar system. Spindle detected them first, the ship's ancient systems pulsing with alert protocols. But with characteristic wisdom, it decided not to immediately inform its queen. The alert could wait a few hours. Let them have this moment of connection, this fragile bridge between worlds. The danger would reveal itself soon enough. The reckoning. Your Majesty, Spindle's voice cut through the peaceful hum of the ship, we have a situation. Thalath's posture changed instantly. One moment she was relaxed, almost casual in her interaction with Elliot, the next, she was the destroyer of the Seventh Fleet once more. Her robes darkened to a midnight blue shot through with what looked like actual stars. Explain, she commanded. 16 vessels approaching from the outer system. Vinehell design signatures, though they're attempting to mask them. Combat formation. They'll enter weapons range in approximately 17 minutes. Elliot felt his blood run cold. Vinehell? The pirates who stole my daughter, Thalath finished, her voice glacial. Yes. She turned to Elliot, and he was startled by the intensity in her eyes. Take Astria to the inner sanctum. Third corridor, follow the purple light. The ship will seal it once you're inside. What about you? A smile curved her lips, but it held no warmth. I'm going to remind the galaxy why the name Thalath is whispered with fear. No. The voice came from the doorway where Starlet stood, her small frame vibrating with emotion. No more destroying. Thalath knelt before her daughter. They are the ones who tore you from me. Who sold you like cargo. Who left you to crash on a strange world. And look what happened. Starlet gestured wildly towards Elliot. I found him. If they hadn't done those terrible things, I wouldn't have Elliot. And you wouldn't have him either. Thalath's expression flickered with surprise. 14 minutes to weapons range, Spindle interjected helpfully. I can't just let them attack us, Thalath said gently to her daughter. Defend, don't destroy, Starlet insisted. Please, Mama. Something passed between mother and daughter, a silent communication that Elliot couldn't interpret but could feel in the air between them, a resonance, like the harmonics of a perfectly tuned instrument. Very well, Thalath said finally. Defense only. She stood and faced the main viewing screen that materialized before them, showing the approaching fleet, sleek, predatory ships moving with coordinated precision. Spindle, open a communication channel to the lead vessel. Channel open, Your Majesty. The screen shifted to show the interior of another ship. A figure sat in shadow, features obscured, but the voice that came through was smooth and calculated. The great Queen Thalath, it said. At last. Do you know how many have died searching for you and your little heir? State your purpose or be gone, Thalath replied coolly. My purpose? The figure leaned forward, revealing features that seemed stitched together from different species, the result of crude genetic augmentation. Revenge, of course. You destroyed my brother when you obliterated the seventh moon of Paler. Your brother commanded the Seventh Fleet. They attacked an Osinari colony world. Details, the figure dismissed with a wave. What matters is balance. You took something from me. I took something from you. But now, it seems, you've found your precious offspring. The scales need rebalancing. Elliot felt Starlet's small hand slip into his. He squeezed it reassuringly, though his heart hammered against his ribs. 8 minutes to weapons range, Spindle announced privately to Thalath. The Queen's eyes narrowed. I could destroy your entire fleet before you fire a single shot. Perhaps. But not before I transmit your location to every bounty hunter and rival house in the quadrant. Your ship is powerful, but even you can't fight the entire galaxy. Thalath didn't flinch. You assume I fear death. No, the figure's smile was cruel. I assume you fear her death. The camera panned to show a weapon mounted on the hull of the lead ship, a device that pulsed with sickly green energy. A genetic disruptor, calibrated specifically for Osinari DNA. It won't harm humans or any other species. Just your kind. Elliot felt Starlet tremble beside him, and something fierce and protective surged within him. Yeah, well, he said, stepping forward into view of the communication screen, you didn't account for me. The pirate leader looked at him with disdain. A human? What could you possibly? I'm her dad, Elliot interrupted. Not biologically, but in all the ways that matter. And here's the thing about human dads, we're really good at improvising when our kids are threatened. He turned to Thalath. You said Starlet, Astrea, has the Osinari gift. Life speaking. The Queen nodded slowly, beginning to understand. And what exactly can life speakers do? They can communicate with living things. Command them, sometimes, if the connection is strong enough. Elliot grinned. And is your ship alive, in a way? The Ilrenth is a sentient vessel, yes. Not just the AI. The actual ship. The walls, the systems. Yes, Thalath said, a spark of something like hope in her eyes. Elliot knelt beside Starlet. Hey, Star. Remember how you made the roses talk? And convinced my toaster it was haunted? I need you to do something like that, but bigger. The little girl's eyes widened with understanding. You want me to talk to the ship? Not just talk. I want you to ask it to share something. 5 minutes later, when the Vinehall fleet entered weapons range, they found themselves facing not one Osinari warship, but what appeared to be hundreds, a vast armada that filled their sensors and view screens. Impossible, the pirate leader breathed. On the bridge of the real Elrenth, Starlet stood with her hands pressed against the wall, eyes closed in concentration. The ship hummed around her, its living metal responding to her gift, projecting perfect holographic duplicates of itself throughout the space surrounding Earth. Each projection carried the ship's energy signature, each one appeared fully armed and battle-ready. Your genetic disruptor can only target one ship, Thalath spoke to the stunned pirate. Choose wrong, and you waste your only chance. You're bluffing, the pirate snarled. These are illusions. Are they? Thalath smiled coldly. My daughter is stronger than you know. Each of those ships could be real. Each could contain us. Or none. Would you like to gamble? The pirate fleet held position, weapons hot but not firing. You have one chance to leave this system, Thalath continued. Spread the word that the Osinari heir is under my protection, and that of her human guardian. Anyone who threatens her will face not just my wrath, but the combined power of both our worlds. On the lead Vinehall ship, sensors blared warnings as Earth's primitive but numerous satellites suddenly reoriented themselves, pointed toward the pirate fleet. What's happening? The pirate demanded. Elliot stepped forward again, holding up his phone. Just a little code I sent to your navigation system. Turns out alien tech isn't that different from the stuff I tinker with at home. Those satellites you're detecting? They're not weapons, yet. But I've convinced your ship that they are. It was a complete bluff. Elliot had done nothing of the sort. But the fear in the pirate's eyes suggested the deception was working. I suggest you leave, Thalath said quietly. And be grateful for my daughter's mercy. I would have turned your ships to ash. The pirate leader's face contorted with rage, but after a tense moment, the fleet began to turn. This isn't over, the pirate hissed before cutting the communication. As the enemy ships retreated, Starlet collapsed into Elliot's arms, exhausted from the effort of maintaining the illusion. Thalath rushed to their side, her hand gentle on her daughter's forehead. She needs rest, the queen said, concern softening her regal features. Elliot nodded, cradling Starlet close. That was amazing, kiddo. You just saved Earth and probably a bunch of other planets too. Starlet smiled weakly. We all did. Together. As they carried the tired child to her quarters, Thalath glanced at Elliot. That was a remarkable bluff about the satellites. I figured if I said it with enough confidence, they'd buy it. Like a true Osinari diplomat, Thalath said, and Elliot was startled to hear genuine admiration in her voice. You know, he said thoughtfully, I think we make a pretty good team. The War Queen, the human barista, and the kid who talks to ships. Indeed, Thalath agreed. Perhaps there is a place for you in our world after all. As they watched over Starlet's sleeping form, the ship humming a gentle lullaby around them, Earth continued its serene spin below. The danger had passed, for now at least. But the galaxy had noticed. And what had begun as a simple rescue mission, a mother searching for her lost child, had become something more, the first tentative alliance between humanity and the stars. Outside, the ship turned gently in orbit. Below, Earth spun on. Above, the stars waited, not as enemies but as possibilities. And in the quiet that followed, three hearts, once scattered across time and tragedy, now beat together as one. Their journey, strange and starborn, had just begun, but for now, they rested together in the knowledge that they had found something rarer than any treasure in the cosmos, a family forged across the stars. 2 months later, the Elrenth hovered above a pristine beach on Earth. Starlet ran along the shore, teaching the waves to sing. Nearby, Thalath stood with regal posture, though her feet were bare in the sand, a concession to Elliot's insistence that you can't wear royal battle armor to the beach. The Osinari High Council is still adjusting to the idea of their queen taking a human consort, she remarked, watching as Elliot constructed an elaborate sand castle with Starlet. They'll get used to it, Elliot said confidently. Just like my friends got used to the fact that my girlfriend can manipulate gravity when she's annoyed. I did apologize for the floating furniture incident. Jeff from work is still telling the story at parties. Thalath smiled, an expression that was becoming more natural to her with each passing day. The council is also discussing establishing a permanent embassy on Earth. Let me guess, somewhere dramatic and isolated. Mountaintop? Middle of a desert? Actually, Thalath said, I suggested your city. Near enough to your apartment that Starlet can still visit her sentient roses. Elliot's hand stilled in the sand. You'd do that? Station the first alien embassy near my mediocre coffee shop just so our daughter can talk to plants. Our daughter, Thalath repeated, savoring the words. Yes, I would. The Osinari have spent millennia looking to the stars for meaning. Perhaps it's time we look to Earth as well. Starlet came running back, her hands cupped around something glowing. Look what I found. Between her fingers, a tiny creature pulsed with bioluminescence, half starfish, half butterfly. That's impossible, Thalath whispered. That's an Osinari lightbearer. They don't exist on Earth. Starlet grinned. I asked the ship to bring some. They're happy here. They like the oxygen. Elliot looked from his daughter to the impossible creature in her hands, then to the queen who had once destroyed moons but now built sand castles with her alien human family. Impossible, he agreed, seems to be our specialty. Above them, invisible to human eyes, the Ilrenth watched over its unusual passengers, the queen, the human, and the child who had brought worlds together. The ship, in its ancient wisdom, adjusted its sensors to capture this moment. One perfect afternoon on a small blue planet, where a family from across the stars had found their home at last. The end.